After the announcements today, Marcus Bontempelli was on the training track. Did he fill you with a little bit of hope that he might be back sooner than maybe he was thinking?
Well, he's headed in the right direction, Jared. I think that common sense will prevail, but we'll be cautious. The initial prognosis and prediction about his return, I think we're still on track for that. I think that's still about 3 weeks away. But yeah, he's making inroads. And so that's really promising for us.
Before we get to the incident itself, how is Luke Cleary?
He's well within himself, actually. Even post-game, we ask the players just to enter some game reflections and we do a little vote with some criteria on who they want to, value as a teammate. And he was able to do that, and his recollection of his own game and who he thought fitted the bill was quite accurate. So he's got to entertain the concussion protocols, but he's in good health.
So culpability in a moment like this, and it'll get fully tested tomorrow night. I imagine it becomes a coaching tool. Just now that a suspension has been issued, how do you feel about the coming together of players?
This one in particular?
Yep.
Well, I, without much knowledge, because I didn't watch it back post-game, and we know Jackson Archer plays a little bit like his dad. He's ferocious at the footy and at the opponent when he needs to be. And people have asked me during the pre-season if there's one message or one thing that I'd like to change within our AFL system, what would it be? And I actually said, well, I'd actually go in and try and remodel the criteria that leads to suspensions, the things that relate to MRP, the appeals process. But the main point I made was I think we can use a civil sort of law approach to this and basically whether it's, on the balance of probabilities is a civil law test. And the balance of probabilities, was their intent? Did Jackson Archer try and clean Luke Cleary up? No, he didn't. He didn't mean to. Yes, he came in quickly, but not for a minute, did he want to hurt Luke? I don't think. So based off what I'd like to happen, I don't think he should be out of the game.
What do you reckon, Sam? First look at it.
It was hard to watch. When you saw it on TV, you have those moments, you're like, oh, I don't really want to watch that one back. I hope the young fellow is okay. I think going quickly into contest is something that's changed, but you watch that quickly and you think, oh, how's he going to do anything differently? If you watch it in super slow motion, you can go through any number of it. But, I think he's thought much more about it, and it was a much more eloquent answer than I'm going to give, so I agree with Luke.
You made your way down. Were you genuinely, you look obviously concerned. Was that part of getting just down to see how the young lad was? Yeah,
there were a couple of things attached to that. There were probably 3 or 4 things. One, historically, our players, and I know Sam had experienced, or even the groups that you've played with, Mitch, they're very emotional, and when they lose a teammate under those circumstances, the endocrine system does different things, and when you're playing football, it does things that don't lead to great performances. So at that point in time, the players need to recollect or collect their thoughts. They need to galvanise, and so part of it was to see if Luke was okay, make sure the whole group remained focused, but also we had 2 interchange left and there was a break and they could have a drink. So strategically and tactically at that point to get down and have some messaging was good.
We'll move on to some other stuff, but you wouldn't coach in the end, like messaging for Jackson Archer to slow up in that instance? Or would you be asking him to be a little bit more discretionary? Because he is very much, Glenn, ball, go, bang, see it. I mean, is it coaching now to, and we're second-guessing Clarko, he would deal with it his own way, but just have a modicum more composure or not?
Well, I'm not sure specifically with him. I don't know the athlete, but I always look back at the Jonathan Brown edits, and I would definitely tell players, don't do that. Right. It's not worth it. You're going to break your face open like he did numerous times, and enormous amount of respect. But losing a player now is so, with 2 on the bench, that's really difficult to win a game with 2 on the bench now. So if you lose players because of, incidents that can be controlled, we do need to be a little bit careful. But I mean, that one incident, it's not very long to go in the game. He's obviously fatigued. Decision making is so split second, very difficult time.
It is.
What are your legal eagles going to argue with Jack Scrimshaw?
Well, speaking to the lawyers, which wasn't me specifically, but it's been graded the highest it could possibly be, and they seem to think that there's a bit of wriggle room on that. So that's hopeful we'll get him back a bit quicker.
How is Jack, incidentally? Because that was a nasty injury as well.
Yeah, he looked a bit worse for wear, if I'm honest. I saw him with a pretty much closed over one side of his face, and he had a minor procedure just to fix up a little broken bone, but that would only be sort of a 1 week anyway, so he sort of would be back at the end of his concussion protocol according to that, but certainly looked a bit worse.
One of the talking points out of Friday night was whether Nick Watson is now being umpired on reputation rather than each single moment. Have you had cause to think about this yet?
Oh, I don't get too involved in the umpiring. I imagine the umpires are very well prepared, the same way that we prepare for opposition. The umpires prepare for opposition, so they know what different players' tactics are. They know about rucks that hold arms. They know about pushing in contests of different players individually, so they know what to look for. And I think I always look at the umpires, and people will complain about it regularly, but I always look at their percentage, and then I look at the disposal efficiency, and I know which one we've got some control over, and I'm much more focused on that.
Yes. So is he the right side of the ledger at the moment, Nick Watson?
I think, he probably is at the moment. I think maybe he could have got one on the weekend, but I'm sure he's got one over the journey that he shouldn't have got. So I'm not complaining about it at this point.
Was he always going to bounce back in that manner? Like he was quiet in your first outing, and then bobs up and.
I mean, he's fascinating how much people are interested in him, but if you go through all the small forwards, I think it's the most difficult position to be consistent, which is why when you get a good small forward that can consistently perform, they're just worth their weight. They don't play well every single week, small forwards, and what they need to be able to do, and whether that's him or Ginnivan or Moore or McDonald or any other, is they need to be able to have a resilience about them that they can bounce back, and he's proven that on one occasion, but it doesn't mean that it won't happen again at some stage.
I'll go on the coaching front, because you and I have got a great, strong relationship, and you're less likely to clip me than you're in this interesting situation. I think it's great. I think there's a great maturity for both you and club that hopefully you coach for another 6, 7, 8 years there. But right now, it's a wait and see. That's what it looks like. Sit comfortably on your shoulder.
That wasn't on the script, mate. I looked at. I said to the players today, "Can you help me? I'm on 360 tonight." They'll ask me two. I know they'll ask me 2 questions in particular.
Yep.
So there's one of them.
Righto. What was the other one? Have we asked it?
About Jamarra.
No, it's coming.
Is it? That's not on there either.
Is it?
Look, it's pretty unique. I think it's probably interesting that both parties are comfortable, and you'd say, well, what's in that? How do you really feel, and how does the club really feel? And so there's a lot of grey in it. And I said a couple of days ago that regardless of whether the senior coach is signed, on for next year, the contracts now don't really mean much, because ultimately you only need to lose 1 or 2 games, and the narrative changes towards your finishing up. And I think we all appreciate that that's really difficult for the brand new coaches, and especially the ones, say, like an Andrew McQualter taking on a team that's we'll need to build over time, and we can be quite dramatic in our assessments at times. So I've become pretty comfortable with the ebb and sway of what happens there. But it always comes back to my belief in our people, the base of human capital and the people who contribute, whether it's our coaches and our medical and high performance staff, but in particular, what we can maximise from our playing group and what they're capable of, and the resolve there. So this year's no different for me in that I've got a pretty firm belief that we can be a formidable team, and it needs to happen through growth. There's absolutely no doubt about that, and so players will need to improve and influence our outcomes. and I'm really comfortable with that. So whatever happens during the course of the year, there's no real leverage points for my future one way or the other. We'll just work it out as time goes on.
The leverage points was an interesting reference point because you go, what are the parameters? Like, are you coaching for your job this year?
Oh, I don't really see it that way because I think these days, and I think John Longmire is probably a prime example. You know, he's an amazingly successful coach. I heard at one point someone said over John's period of time, you know, they played off in 6 grand finals. They've only won one. He's the only one who's been there the whole journey. He must be the problem. So I almost fell off my chair. Yeah. You know, here's a coach who's been unbelievably successful. He's just, he's coached a grand final, but he, under his own volition, has finished up. And so I think, in today's day and age, you could possibly coach a premiership side, but finish up on the club in your terms. The wins and the losses don't necessarily matter as much as they used to, because clubs need stability, and that's where we talk about our playing group and the historical playing groups, but our Peter Gordon and what he did for our football club as an executive, as an administrator, as the guy who lobbied for the funding of the redevelopment of Whitten Oval. You walk in, it's just an incredible place to be. And when you think of someone like that and the influences that those people have had over the journey, the club's just bigger than any individual. But I'll at some point during the year sit down with the club and we'll work out whether 2026 is part of the plan for me.